Russians flee Crimea as Ukraine executes relentless retaliation campaign. A significant and accelerating exodus of Russian citizens from the Crimean Peninsula is underway, triggered by Ukraine's increasingly bold and effective campaign of retaliation against military and strategic targets in the occupied territory. Following months of increasingly audacious drone strikes, missile attacks, and special operations raids, the sense of security that Moscow had sought to project over the annexed peninsula has evaporated, leading to a growing wave of departures among Russian residents who had relocated to Crimea since its 2014 annexation. The situation on the ground, as pieced together from Ukrainian intelligence reports, social media accounts, and limited independent media access, paints a picture of mounting panic and disillusionment among the Russian population in Crimea. The once vaunted air defenses, largely consisting of Russian S-300 and S-400 systems, appear increasingly porous, unable to consistently intercept the growing barrage of Ukrainian attacks. These strikes have targeted vital military infrastructure, including naval bases, airfields, ammunition depots, and logistical hubs, significantly degrading Russia's ability to project power from the peninsula and sustain its forces in occupied southern Ukraine. The most recent wave of panic was reportedly sparked by a series of particularly damaging and well-coordinated strikes over the past 2 weeks. These attacks, utilizing a combination of advanced long-range drones and potentially Western-supplied precision-guided munitions, have reportedly resulted in significant casualties among Russian military personnel and the destruction of high-value assets. While Moscow has largely downplayed the extent of the damage in its official statements, the sheer frequency and impact of the Ukrainian operations are undeniable. Eyewitness accounts and social media posts from Crimea speak of long queues at the Kerch Strait Bridge, the sole land link connecting the peninsula to mainland Russia, as civilians attempt to leave. Ferry services are reportedly operating at maximum capacity, and air traffic, while limited, is heavily booked. The demographics of those fleeing appear to be primarily Russian citizens who moved to Crimea after 2014, including military families, government officials, and those who had invested in property and businesses under Russian administration. The atmosphere has changed dramatically, said a Crimean resident who spoke to a Ukrainian news outlet via encrypted messaging. Just a year ago, everything felt settled, under control. Now the explosions are happening more often, closer to residential areas. The Russian military is visible everywhere, stressed and on edge. People who came here from Russia are talking about going back. They don't feel safe anymore. Ukraine's strategy in targeting Crimea is multifaceted. Firstly, it aims to degrade Russia's military capabilities in the region, weakening its offensive potential in the ongoing conflict. Secondly, it seeks to undermine Russia's claim of sovereignty over the peninsula and demonstrate that its occupation is neither secure nor sustainable. Thirdly, by making life increasingly uncomfortable and dangerous for Russian residents, Kyiv hopes to pressure Moscow to reconsider its occupation and potentially create internal dissent within Crimea. The effectiveness of Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities has been significantly enhanced by the provision of advanced weaponry and intelligence support from its Western allies. While specific details are often kept confidential, it is widely believed that systems like the U.S.-supplied ATACMS long-range tactical missile, as well as sophisticated drone technology and satellite imagery, have played a crucial role in enabling Ukraine to reach deep behind enemy lines. Russia's response to the escalating situation in Crimea has been a mix of increased security measures, intensified air defenses, and retaliatory strikes against Ukrainian territory. However, these efforts have so far failed to stem the tide of Ukrainian attacks or reassure the increasingly nervous Russian population in Crimea. The failure of Russia's vaunted air defense systems to provide adequate protection has been a particularly demoralizing factor for both the military and civilians. The situation in Crimea represents a significant turning point in the conflict. For Ukraine, it demonstrates a growing capability to project power into territory that Russia considers its own, shifting the psychological and strategic landscape of the war. For Russia, the growing instability in Crimea is a major embarrassment and a strategic vulnerability that it can ill afford, particularly as it continues to grapple with the ongoing war in eastern and southern Ukraine. The international community is closely monitoring the developments in Crimea. While most nations still recognize the peninsula as Ukrainian territory illegally annexed by Russia, the escalating conflict there raises concerns about potential escalation and the risk of the war spilling over into neighboring countries. The exodus of Russians from Crimea also has significant humanitarian implications. While Ukraine views these individuals as having illegally settled in occupied territory, the reality is that a large-scale displacement of people could create a significant humanitarian crisis requiring international attention and assistance. Looking ahead, the situation in Crimea is likely to remain highly volatile. Ukraine is expected to continue its campaign of attrition, seeking to further degrade Russian military capabilities and erode Moscow's control over the peninsula. Russia, in turn, will likely intensify its efforts to bolster its defenses and retaliate against Ukrainian targets. The long-term consequences of this unfolding situation are profound. If Ukraine can sustain its pressure on Crimea, it could eventually create the conditions for a potential future counteroffensive aimed at retaking the peninsula. Even if a direct military recapture is not immediately feasible, the ongoing instability and the flight of Russian citizens undermine Russia's claims of legitimate sovereignty and keep the issue of Crimea firmly on the international agenda. The sight of Russians fleeing a territory that the Kremlin declared as irrevocably Russian is a powerful symbol of Ukraine's resilience and the ultimate failure of Russia's annexation project. The revenge that Ukraine is taking is not just military. It is also deeply symbolic, striking at the heart of Russia's territorial ambitions and its carefully constructed narrative.